Hello and welcome to Shane and Todd's Cloudy Podcast, big episode number 428, recorded live April 10th, 2019. As you can see, I am your host, Todd Clint. I am not sharing the stage with Shane. Mark wasn't even available this week. Lori is gone. Everybody has legitimate work and value to add except for me. I'm the only one that's free to do the podcast today. So I'm all by my lonesome. I got my buddies in the chat room here. They're keeping me company. Got some folks on YouTube. They're keeping me company as well. So I appreciate that. I don't feel quite so lonely here. Production notes, the production has been a little slow because I've been traveling. I was on the road 3 out of the last 4 weeks. Many of those days were spent in foreign countries. It was very, very exhausting. But anyway, I'm all caught up. Well, as of about 3 minutes ago, I was all caught up with production, but I will try to get this one out as quickly as possible. And of course, this production would not be possible without the fine folks at SISKit, who, since I'm not sharing the screen with Shane, you can see my crudely made sign up there. I really need to get a better one of those. Those folks are very, very patient with me and not getting a good sign up there. Since there's no Shane to weigh this down, I'm going to try to make this a little shorter one today. So let's get going. First off, this is something that I meant to do a month ago, but with all the travel coming up and all the prep for the travel and all the whining about the prep for the travel, I really fell behind. But last month, on March 16th, was the 10-year anniversary of this podcast. Holy cow. I did my very first SharePoint podcast, March 16th of 2009. Now, this is something we like to celebrate the anniversary every March when it comes up, and I normally forget about it until April, much like I did this year. This is the 10th anniversary, so I thought I would spend a little more time talking about that. So what I did this morning, because I suffer from my art sometimes, is I watched the entire first episode of this podcast, 10-year-old episode, to just kind of soak in the nostalgia and feel what it all was. And I had a lot of notes. I took some notes, and I'm not going to repeat them all. They're not all family-friendly necessarily. One thing that I noticed was my energy level was a whole lot lower. I don't believe in the whole 26 minutes or whatever that podcast was that I smiled a single time. And that's something that's tough. I mean, we all kind of let our faces rest and we don't pay attention to all that. But that one was really bad. Like there was no energy, no zip, no gusto. So I'm glad I've kind of fixed that. Sandy in the chat room is saying she might have been in one of those. Sandy, I don't remember when you for sure popped in, but it wouldn't surprise me if you were in the first few of those single digits. I know Lori has suffered with this the entire time. Back in those days, John Farringer was in there. There's just a bunch of folks. And I don't think that first few, I didn't have a chat room or any of that, so I didn't have all this, the interaction that I have now. But I did listen to that podcast. The funny thing was the big news after I explained, that this was my first podcast and kind of what my inspirations were and things like that. The big news was the February 2009 CU for SharePoint 2007. There are so many funny things about that statement. That was the big news. And I was talking about how it was the February CU, but it was released in March. How in the world could that happen? It was pretty funny. And then I was kind of going through my notes. And so Mark in the chat room is saying he joined before IRC. So we did IRC for a while. We're in Slack now. I was on a system called StickCam for a while, and then Ustream, I believe. And Mark's mentioning he was on before YouTube. So I did go back and look at that, Mark. My first podcast on YouTube was number 142. So by way of comparison, we're on 428 now. And that was 6 years ago that the first episode of YouTube went on. So Mark, that means you've been suffering through this. So StickCam was the first one. So you've been here forever. I can't even begin to imagine what that must feel like for you. It must be horrible. Couple of things that I also noted was when I did my first studio was in my basement at my previous house, and it had been, the basement in the house was unfinished. So it was just, cinder block walls, well, poured concrete walls, but concrete walls. And the family that had lived there before us had made like a makeshift office in the basement. And it was in one corner, and it had like eye bolts coming out of the ceiling with some wire strung up and then like a curtain wrapped around. So that was the closest thing that I had to any sort of studio in that house. And that's why I recorded it. So I had this blue curtain behind me to make it look like a professional thing. But before, so we lived in that house for several years before I did that podcast. And that area with the curtain and all that was a great place to put the cat box. And so the first few episodes of the podcast I recorded next to the cat box until one morning when the cat decided to, well, use the cat box mid recording. And I decided that maybe that wasn't the best location for it. But when I see that and I see the blue curtain and all that, it just makes me laugh that that's where that was. So I'm not recording by a cat box anymore, which is definitely an upgrade. And as I was watching that podcast, a couple other things jumped out at me. The word Zune came out. May have to explain that word to some of our younger viewers, but I did mention the Microsoft Zune. Another thing that I mentioned is that I was pretty excited because I would be going to the second SP TechCon in a couple of months. The first SP TechCon had been in San Francisco the previous month in February of 2009. So that was kind of funny because there's been about 4 dozen SP TechCons since then. That was pretty funny. And then my mom got a lot of shout outs, which was that was funny. Sandy is showing that she still has the old. So I think Stickcam went under a while back, which is why I switched to Ustream. And then wow, you are old school, Sandy. Holy cow, that is crazy. Anyway, 10 years of this podcast. It's crazy. I don't remember it. So Shane and I kind of came back in. Shane got many references in the first podcast. I may go edit those out, honestly. You just kind of bleep them out. I'm thinking about putting that podcast up on YouTube just for nostalgia's sake. It's kind of funny. But I do have copies. I've got many local copies of all the podcasts. I've got them in different spots and all that because I would hate to lose any of that because once in a while I like to go back and watch them. So I might put that out on YouTube this week because I don't think that one's out there anywhere. But for those of you that are in the chat room now and still were there all those years ago, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm surprised that this is valuable to you that many years later, but it's been a whole lot of fun for me, a whole lot of fun for Shane. So we both thank you. Not enough fun for Shane to show up this morning though, but do what you can. I mentioned that there was a lot of travel over the last week, and so the last 3 weeks, or the last 4 weeks, I've been all over. I was in Kansas City 4 weeks ago for a user group meeting, and then later that week, I went down to Branson for the North American Collaboration Summit, had a blast there. The next week, I was in Seattle for the MVP Summit, and then my family and I went up to Vancouver, British Columbia, took the train. Highly recommend that. Very great. Traveling by train is so much less stressful than flying. Was home for a week, and then last week I spent half of the week in Stockholm at the Ceph event, Ceph Forum, and it used to be the SharePoint Exchange Forum. Now it's Search and Explore, something Joran renamed it, but that was in downtown Stockholm last week, so that was on Monday and Tuesday. Had a blast there. Joran Huseman, a buddy of mine, I've been doing that conference since 2008. They don't have it quite every year, but I've been over there 6 or 8 times. Had a great time. My coworkers, Mark Anderson and Julie Turner, were over there as well as a bunch of my other buddies. Eric Ships was there. Mike Fitzmaurice was there. All kinds of people. It was just a blast. Got to go over there. I love Stockholm. I've never regretted going over there. This year, we stayed at a hotel that used to be a prison, which was very funny. It was a prison into the 70s. So, less than 40 years ago, it was housing prisoners. And they very much embrace the prison motif and, things all over the wall. The rooms are very small. The rooms are the size of a cell. So very, very tiny. And then whatever the adjacent room is, they split that in half, and that's the bathroom. So I got half of a room for a bathroom, and then the room 2 down from me got half of them. That was an interesting thing. It had bunk beds. So because the room wasn't big enough for anything wider than a twin bed. So there was a bed, and then there was a bunk bed that had like news articles about people who'd been in that prison, and then it could fold down into a bed. I almost used it like a shelf to store things because there wasn't much space in the room. The desk was about the size of my laptop and my mouse. It was pretty tiny. So Sandy, you say you've read about it in hotel sites. I would recommend it. It is very funny. Just know, so my wife has gone over to Sweden with me a couple of times, and I was telling her that this would have been funny because we would have gotten a room together. We would have slept on bunk beds, which is not something that we've ever done before when we've traveled. And the other thing that was funny was, it's laid out like a prison, just like you would expect a prison, like in all the movies. And I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but all of the non-Stockholm resident speakers were all staying in that hotel, and we were all kind of in the same cell block, which was funny. And at one point, there's no keyholes on the doors. So at one time, I'm standing next to the door. Well, I guess you're always standing next to the door because the room is so very tiny. And I heard the little lock thing jiggle, like somebody was trying to scan it. And I thought, that's, what's up with that? And then I heard it again, and then the door one of my other buddies, Stefan Bauer, was there, and he was trying to get into the wrong room accidentally because we were all staying there. It was a blast. That whole hotel was just a lot of fun, and it looks like a prison yard. It was just a good time. So Joran did a great job with that. I finally got to go to one of the tourist attractions in Stockholm I've always wanted to go to. They have a museum for a ship that sunk called the Vasa. If you're ever in Stockholm, I highly recommend that. This is a big 17th century ship that on its maiden voyage, about 20 minutes into its maiden voyage, it sunk. And so there's a whole story about that. But the thing about it is it was immaculately preserved. And so you can see all the ornate woodwork. And of course, there's a great story about why it sunk and all those things. I've wanted to go there a bunch, and I just have never been able to fit it into my schedule, and almost didn't get it into my schedule this time because I had a flight delay. But Joran and the other folks there were kind enough to kind of wait for me and get that going. So I got to go see the Vasa. Highly recommend that if you're ever in Stockholm. Joran does a great job. Stockholm is a great city, so I highly recommend anybody go. But he has done a great job taking us to many of the touristy things there. So if you're ever in Stockholm, I recommend the Vasa. We took a boat tour of the archipelago and all the islands once. That was great. There was a castle tour we did once that was really good. There's an ABBA museum there, which is just so much fun. I don't know if it's still there now, but there was a tour of places that took locations that took place in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo books or the Millennium series. That all takes place in a part of Stockholm called Gamla Stan, or the Old Town. And there was a tour of that, so we saw these places where scenes took place in Gamla Stan. So many great things to do in Sweden. I'm just so lucky that I get to go over there. I've been there enough that I have, some people over there know who I am. And a few people at the conference came over and introduced themselves and said hi. I so appreciate that. I always say that when we're talking about things that are coming up. If you see me at a conference, come up, introduce yourself. These folks did it. I know that is such an embarrassing thing. It's tough to do because you don't know this person and you're just walking up. And so a few folks did it, and I appreciate that. It was very good to meet them. And I was talking to a couple of them after my first session, but before my second one, and was asking them about some stuff, and they gave me some ideas to add to my second session that I worked in that were things I hadn't thought of, the things they were curious about. So I really appreciate them coming up. And again, I reiterate, if you ever see me, come introduce yourself. Would love to talk to you. Eric Van Roy mentions that everybody gets a hug. Eric might have gotten a couple extra hugs. I met him a while back at the Minneapolis airport. Security may have gotten, kept their eye on us. But yeah, I'm a really friendly guy. So for goodness sakes, come and introduce yourself. The sessions that I did in Stockholm, one was on Office 365 groups and what they are and how to manage them and what they do. That was a pretty good session. And then I did my PowerShell with Office 365 session. That one went really well. It was in the big room, so I felt a lot of pressure there, but it seemed to go over really well. So talk to Joran Huseman for inviting me. I look forward to going over again next year. Thanks to all the people who went to my sessions. It was great. That finished on Tuesday. Wednesday, Mark and I went over to Copenhagen. I'd never been to Denmark, never been to Copenhagen. Mark had a couple of times, so we went over there, spent a couple of days in Copenhagen. Had a blast. Such a great city. Didn't even get to scratch the surface on what there was to do there, but we stayed in an old part of town, not in a former prison, which was kind of nice. Still very small room. If you ever stay in Europe in any of the old parts of towns, you kind of get used to those small rooms. Kind of cozy, wasn't too bad, but had a blast in Copenhagen. Very lucky, very fortunate. So I got back Friday. I'm mostly caught up now, but that's where I've spent my last couple of weeks. Really don't have a lot of travel scheduled until the SharePoint conference, so I get settled down. Enough about that. I mentioned that I did an Office 365 session in Stockholm. I did that same session yesterday for my buddy Christian Buckley. He is part of the Utah SharePoint user group, and he's reached out to me a couple of months ago, asked if I would want to present remotely at his user group meeting, and I said, heck yes, I would. And so I got to do that yesterday. If you would like to see that session, it's not the full session that I did in Stockholm, because I just didn't have the time. But you can, and I think I got the wrong link on that. You can see that on YouTube. I posted a link, but it's the wrong link. Let me jump into Twitter quick and grab the right link. That's just going to show up all over the place here. But that was a fun time. Christian's a great guy. If you know Christian, I had a good time with that. And people asked a lot of good questions. Got to learn some new stuff from those, the way people are using PowerShell. So that was a good time. And I've mentioned before, if you've got a user group and you can have remote speakers, or if you can have local speakers and you're within, a couple hour drive of here, reach out to me. I'll try to make it work. I enjoy doing those things. I enjoy reaching out to people. So Christian took me up on that, and I hooked him up yesterday. And then somebody who was on that call said, hey, that was great. Could you do that session at our user group? So I'm kind of working on the logistics for that, but I'm probably going to do it for somebody else. So again, if you've got a user group and you can take remote people, Eric's taken me up on that. I've done his user group. Shane also did it. So sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not such a good thing, but we're always happy to do those kind of things, especially stuff that we love to do. Speaking of these webinars, I am doing another one for SISKit next week. So April 16th, and I have every intention of having this podcast out before, I just posted that thing everywhere. Every intention of having this podcast out before April 16th. So if you're listening to it, you can sign up for it. But if you go to my blog, toddclint.com, and it's one of the blog posts in there, you can sign up for it. This one is going to be based on the other talk that I did at the SharePoint Exchange Forum in Stockholm about Office 365 groups, and just talk about, this one's going to be more of a management bent a little bit. Again, I don't have the full time to talk about all the fun stuff that I like to talk about with groups. And with SISKit, they've got a lot of, the security manager software and just ways to keep your hands wrapped around your Office 365 tenant. So I will spend a bunch of time kind of explaining where those problems can show up in Office 365 with the groups, and then let the SISKit folks talk to you about how you can bring those back in. So you can sign up for that. It is free, and we would love to have you. Let me make sure that that's the right link. That's the right link. Okay. Sign up for that. It's free. Would love to have you, and would love to see what people are doing with groups. Mark Chrisman in the chat room says that the groups might be giving him an ulcer. So I have to reach out to Mark and find out what problems he's having, so I can add hopefully some solutions, or maybe some suggestions to drink in my notes when I do that session. Okay. So another blog post that I have, and let me open this up, make sure it's the right one. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So one of the things so by a factor of 10 probably, the most popular posts on my blog, toddclint.com, are my different SharePoint builds lists from 2010, 2013, 2016, 2019, all of those. Update those. They get the most traffic on my blog by far. When I was getting ready to do the Office 365 session, or the PowerShell with Office 365 session in Stockholm last week, I was talking to a couple of guys that had come up and introduced themselves, and they were mentioning that they were just getting into PowerShell with Office 365, and it was tough to get their heads wrapped around what modules they needed for what. And I said, yeah, it kind of is tough. And then I thought, I should just have a blog post that has all of the modules, how to install them, where they're at, what version they are, so if you need to install the new ones. So I did blog that last week. And if you go to my blog, it's the blog post 826. It's called Office 365 PowerShell Module Installs. And it is all the modules that I use both official Microsoft modules and a couple of important third-party modules, essential third-party modules that I use to interact with Office 365. And there's a couple of things that I need to add to it yet that I've seen. Basically, I've got, again, what the version number is and what you use it for, what the prefix in the commandlets is, and then how to install it. So you should just be able to go through. I need to put in how you can tell using find module what version you've got, update module. I don't want to clutter the thing up, but I need to add some of that in there too. And I did something else with this blog post that I've been meaning to do that I have not executed on yet on most of my other blog posts, is I put a monthly reminder in my Outlook calendar that every, I think I've got it for the 15th of the month now. I might crank it back a little bit, but once a month, go out and check that blog post and make sure that it's still current. Because even in the time that I published it a week ago, 2 of the modules have had newer versions since then. So trying to keep up to date on that. So I would love your feedback on that blog post. Again, it's blog post 826, Office 365 PowerShell module installs. If there is content that I could add there or something like that, let me know. Something that doesn't say, whatever. And I've also got at the bottom the last updated date, so you kind of know how current it is. But honestly, I was setting a new machine up yesterday, and that's when I'm like, I should go check those versions. And yep, 2 of them are already out of date. So I'm thinking about putting a script there that adds all those modules or something. I haven't decided yet. But again, let me know if that's helpful. Let me know if there's anything I can add to it that will make it better for you. This next thing has no relationship to anything else that I've talked about, but I just saw it right before the podcast and it kind of cracked me up. So this is an article in the news about a police department, a sheriff's department in Washington County, Oregon, got a call from a woman. She was afraid she reported that somebody had broken into her house and they had barricaded themselves in the bathroom. She could hear them moving around in there. She could see, the light was on. They'd turned the light on in the bathroom. She could see the shadows moving underneath the door. She was scared. And so the cops showed up and they had the canine, they had the dog with them. They were all ready to take this burglar down. And they tried to talk the burglar out, and the burglar wouldn't listen to reason, wouldn't come out, wouldn't respond to him. So they broke down the door, guns a-blazing, and it was her Roomba. Her Roomba had gotten into the bathroom and had shut the door behind itself and was just bouncing around inside of the bathroom. The cops were very complimentary that the Roomba had done a very thorough job cleaning the floor. They did get a picture of it, and so now they can keep an eye on that. I bring that up because I also have a Roomba, and I go to great lengths to make sure that my Roomba doesn't get trapped inside of things. You got to have your doors in a certain way. I don't have dogs, but I understand that happens with dogs a lot. They'll run into a room because they're afraid of something and hide behind the door, and then the door will swing shut and they'll lock themselves in rooms. My cats are far too lazy to do anything like that, but now I see that I need to keep my eye on my Roomba to make sure that it doesn't do that. So, and I just run my Roomba yesterday, so I was thankful that my Roomba hadn't caused me to call the cops. The other thing about that is I've had my Roomba long enough that the battery's not very good, so it would have not paced inside of any locked room for much time before it just pooped out. But I do love technology. Those of you that have been with the show for a while know that I like anything with an on-off switch and a blue LED. That's just kind of really where my attention focuses. But sometimes it's not so great, like when you think that it might be attacking you like a burglar. Tablets, yes. Oh, so speaking of tablets, but thank you for that segue, Mark. So as I was traveling about Europe, I was taking my new trusty Surface Go with me. So I've talked about this numerous times on the podcast, but since Mark was begging me to talk about it some more, who am I to say no to my beloved audience? But this is a little, let me make sure that this doesn't expose anything it shouldn't. A little 10-inch Surface device, great for traveling. And the one that I got, specifically the reason that I got it is it has an LTE slot in it. I have both my AT&T account and I've also got Google Fi. They both work fine internationally. So I was able to just roam around and have internet access. When I was at the conference center, it automatically jumped onto that. When I was in the prison, it automatically jumped onto that. When I wasn't at either of those places, it automatically jumped on Mark and I took the train from Stockholm to Copenhagen, used that the whole time. It was great. Big fan of that. So thanks, Mark, for bringing that up. I really mean to do like a YouTube review of the Go and talk about some of the things that I like about it. It's treated me pretty well. Eric's talking about getting a Roomba for the cat hair and all that. It does make a bit of a difference. The thing that I will say, though, is I would never position the Roomba as a vacuum cleaner so much as maybe a sweeper. Like, it doesn't physically have vacuum. It's got rollers and it's got brushes. So we've got hardwood floors in our main floor everywhere, and it does really well with that. I don't think it would do so well on carpet. I don't run it on rugs and that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you've got cat hair everywhere, it would definitely pick that up. And for anybody, and I don't know about yourself, Eric, but they give military veterans a discount. So if you would go to the website id.me, I think, you can verify your veteran status with them. And then Roomba is one of about 4 bazillion places that will give you a discount if ID.me will vouch for you as a veteran. So when I bought my Roomba, I got like 10% off from that. So thanks to Roomba for that. That was pretty nice of them. There has been a whole lot that has gone on in the Office 365 and SharePoint world since I have gotten to tell you guys about it. So one of the things that showed up was something that was, good, scary, maybe not good or whatever. But on March 12th, Microsoft, the SharePoint team, released the SharePoint provisioning service. And this is, I hesitate to make this comparison, but it is the most appropriate, I think. Think of it as a current day, next generation, only positive version of the Fab 40. I hate using those two words together, but it is a website that you can go to, the SharePoint provisioning service, and it is a service that will take built up types of sites and will provision them to your Office 365 tenant for you. Now, yes, I think everybody in the chat room just hung up on me. Everybody got disgusted. They all rage quit on me. Hear me out. Hear me out. The Fab 40 back in the day was a problem for 2 reasons. Number one, the Fab 40 was put out as part of a marketing push, not as part of a technical push or product push, anything like that. Devin is saying this is Microsoft sanctioned. It would probably work. The Fab 40 was also Microsoft sanctioned. Anyway, it was put out as a marketing thing to show what SharePoint could do, but it was not positioned as a marketing thing. It was positioned as, hey, you should use these in production. That was never its intent. It just got misused by everybody, myself included. The other thing about the Fab 40 was it was 2 sets of 20 things. It was 20 site definitions and 20 site templates, and those installed differently. So the site templates were the STP files that you could add. The site definitions were solutions that you had to add. And they didn't upgrade very well. And depending on which Fab 40 template you were using for whatever, you had different issues with upgrading. Yes. So lots of mistakes were made. And again, the Fab 40 came out like 12 years ago. It was a long time. We're much smarter now, all that. So this site provisioning service allows you to provision sites into your Office 365 tenant. Since it's all in the cloud, it can't muck up your farm like the solutions did with the Fab 40, the 20 solutions. And you can use this. I mean, it's just a much better ecosystem, but it gives you the ability to see what's out there. There's a bunch of great content out there already, and you can kind of poke through it. So I'll leave a link in the chat room. You can check that out if you are curious about this, but still are nursing wounds from the Fab 40. And I have seen Fab 40 sites in production in the last year. I have a customer that's still using 2007. They've got some Fab 40 there. If you do want to check these out, don't forget that if you have MSDN, you get an Office 365 tenant for that. So you can go ahead and put these in there and sacrifice that one as opposed to your production one. You can go out to office365.com and get a trial tenant and try them out there. Again, not in production. If you work for a Microsoft partner and you're all set up, you can go to demos.microsoft.com. You can set some stuff up there as well. So give these a try. This is a great way to look and see what functionality is out there. Let some stuff be built for you. I've got some other things coming out that are not directly related to this, but somewhat related to provisioning and how to, stamp things out, reproduce them reliably. And this is all part of that. Office 365 as a platform has really become good at this lately. And so this is, I'm glad to see this again. It brings up some wounds, and I get that. I've suffered as much as the next person. I've done a lot of SharePoint migrations in my day, and I've never, ever uttered the phrase, "Oh, thank God this farm has the Fab 40 installed on it." Has never, ever happened. But check that out. Let me know what you think about the provisioning service. Some other new things that have come out. Those of you that listen to the podcast a lot or ever see me in person have probably picked up on the fact that Microsoft Teams and I are not besties necessarily. I like the idea of Teams, sort of, but their execution is just so painful in so many different ways. I want to love it. I'll drink the Microsoft Kool-Aid. I'll take the big jug and I'll get the big Kool-Aid mustache. Man, I'm an easy sell, but Teams has really been rough. But I'm trying. So within the last month or so, they have announced some new Teams functionality. And there's a couple of pieces of functionality that I'm pretty excited about. So this particular article came out on March 19th. So we're looking at about a month ago, a whole bunch of things that they're working on. Some are already out and some are coming out. One of the things that they've been getting a lot of feedback on is people want secure private channels. So this is the ability to have private teams that are not the entire team. And boy, I hate the fact that they use the word team for the product name and team for anyway. But secure private channels, if you've never heard of it, you're probably okay. But if you have heard of it, you're probably saying, thank God they're going to show up. So secure private channels are going to be coming later this year. It's not out yet, but later this year. A couple of things that they're doing for meetings, live captions. So this is in private preview or public preview for the English language now. The ability to have live captions during meetings for people who can't have the sound on or hard of hearing or whatever. So that's coming on. One of the new things that I really like is this idea, and I haven't played with it much, but the Microsoft Whiteboard, where you can have a webcam that's pointed at a whiteboard and it will make the person, anyway, I saw some previews of it. It was pretty cool. So I'm actually, honest to goodness, installing a whiteboard in my office. And I think if you look over my shoulder, you can see the holes where the whiteboard is going to be mounted. I made the wrong size holes over there. But going to put a whiteboard in, so that'll be pretty cool. And boy, I really missed where those holes were at. But that will be cool. And then some more intelligence stuff that will, so the camera work and all that is really, really amazing. So looking forward to that. It doesn't address any of the problems that I have with Teams, but I'm hopeful that they're working on those in the background. If you use Teams, make sure you check this out. Make sure that your tenant is in whatever flight makes sense, first release, whatever, to get these functionality. But I do like some of the things that Teams has got going on, so I look forward to using some of those. Finally, I wanted to mention, I've mentioned the folks at SISKit a bunch this episode, and this is almost the last reference, I promise. This is something that I can't remember if I brought this up or not, but I had to give this to a customer a couple weeks ago, so this made me think I wanted to talk about it here. One of the things that I used to do a lot with on-prem services, servers and that, is troubleshoot performance issues. And I've actually done that on some on-prem stuff recently. But when you move to SharePoint Online, you kind of get this false sense of security that you don't have to worry about that anymore because Microsoft's running the servers and there's really not much you can do to speed things up or slow things down. And that is just not true. And a couple of months ago, one of the folks at SISKit on their blog posted a blog article on SharePoint page performance. Why does it matter? Everybody knows why it matters, of course, because when pages get slow, people call the help desk, they badmouth SharePoint. We hate that. But the real value in this article is breaking down what makes up a page and what pieces take time and what you can do to minimize the time that it takes for a page to load. So I like the way that they broke this down. and just talked about the things that you can do, developer tools and things like that. And really like that one. So this is one that I need to read again because they've just got some really good information in here. So if you're an IT pro and again looking for things to do, where your job is going to go, performance on your pages is something that you can keep an eye on. And then of course at the end they talk about a tool that they have, SISKit Insights, that will help you drill into that better. So check that out. And I think SISKit Insights, let me look at that. So SISKit Insights has a free version and then has a for pay version. So that's good. But anyway, I know that for a while I kind of talked myself into thinking that page performance and performance in SharePoint Online was not anything I could do anything about, and this blog post is a good reminder that there is. And I didn't bring this up at the beginning, but all of the things that I've talked about, all the web pages, if you go to toddclint.com/podcast 428, I'll have all the links there as I do every week. So you can always, whatever the podcast number is, /podcast, whatever, and it will take you there. That is all the content. I do have some promotional community stuff I want to talk about. June 15th is SharePoint Saturday Nashville, so you should go there if you're in the Nashville area. I will not be there, but there will be many, many smart people there talking about many interesting things. SharePoint Saturday Charlotte, North Carolina is August 10th. I will also not be there, but you should go there as well. And both of these, I believe, are at spsevents.org. You can search for them there. Things I will be at SharePoint Saturday Atlanta, May 11th. I'm not entirely sure what I'm talking about there yet, but I will be at SharePoint Saturday Atlanta. So if you're going to be in that area, come on down. It's the weekend of Mother's Day, but you'll be able to get back home, get back home in time to say Happy Mother's Day to your wife, mother, whatever. But I will be there hanging out in Atlanta, and I believe Lori's going to be there also. It's just a quick 3-hour drive from there. I hope she will be there because she's my ride from the airport. So that would be great if she was there. May 11th. Of course, then May 21st, SharePoint conference in Las Vegas. Shane and I are doing an admin workshop on Monday, May 20th. We would love to see you there. We got the numbers in. There's going to be a lot of folks there. I'm pretty excited about that. So show up for there. We are not doing any breakouts during the week, but I am talking to the SISKit folks to see if we want to do something with them or whatever. If there's going to be a bunch of the podcast folks there, we should get together, have a meal together, hang out. So let me know if you're going to be showing up for that. Also talking to some folks about doing another remote user group talk. So when I get the dates and all that, I will share that with you guys. And then, of course, on Tuesday, I'll be doing the groups talk for the SISKit folks. So busy, busy times. Thanks, everybody. You have been a great crowd. I don't know if Shane or Mark or somebody will be joining me next week. I hope so, although I kind of... I like having the spotlight all to myself, just a big stage, nobody taking any of the glorious attention away from me. But hopefully Shane will be back next week. He's a busy guy, very in demand. This Power Apps thing, I think it might catch on. I don't know. But chat room, stick around for a bit. I will be there. Everybody else, I will see you next week. Thanks. Have a good day.